Well, hello, everybody, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you have downloaded or dialed in from. And welcome to the March Spotlight from Wyseminds. And today we are going to talk about and begin to understand about the potential opportunity you can gain for growth by knowing where you stand. Now, we all know as founders that we are sometimes challenged by this, sometimes exciting roller coaster of growing businesses. But sometimes when it just feels heavy and it really doesn't matter what we do, we just can't seem to get the acceleration of growth that we're looking for or equals the effort that we're putting in. And today we are going to talk about one way of looking at our business that can support a different way of feeling about this challenge. So let's begin. And I want us to begin, as we always do, by asking ourselves a question, because with that question, we kind of ground ourselves into the moment of the next 35 minutes about understanding the power of where we stand in our business as founders. So the question of today is, when was the last time that growth felt easy? Now, I don't mean easy by, oh my gosh, I can just happen like that. I mean, where it feels effortless, it feels that the stars are aligned. Let's have a think. When was it last just felt like the world was on your side? Maybe it was last week or last month, or perhaps even it can be as far ago as I've talked to founders about, as far ago as last year. And that's exactly what we want to talk about today. This roller coaster of growth and the influence that we can have on it as a founder. Now, when we start our business, we're starting it with big passion and a want to change something for the better. We have this perception that growth moves in this sort of line, this linear progress. We do, it moves forward. We do again, it moves forward. We take on staff, we take on extra decisions, etc., and we create a linear growth. But actually, growth of businesses doesn't happen in lines. It happens in waves or phases. And each one of those waves and phases has known patterns to it. And with that pattern, once we can begin to understand it, we can understand as a founder how to influence those patterns of growth to our favor. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Today, we're identifying where you are with your business on that wave and understanding exactly this phase of what it requires of you. So take that moment of when it last felt that the stars were aligned, and let's see if we can improve that situation by the end of this 30 minutes. But really, as much as we're going to talk a little bit about theory, it is a known story of mine. Now, I often talk about my 3 a.m. story, the moment I was sat in the garden with my hands to the air, as if I was asking the universe, what more can I do? I was growing a new brand in Northern Europe during the Great Recession of 2008 and 9. And, everything was good on paper. It was a value brand. Savers is the brand for a recessionary period. Inside, it felt okay, but things just felt heavy and chugging. And it didn't feel as easy as it did right in the beginning. We'd opened 30 stores just like that. So why was it slowing down when everything in the external environment and internally just felt perfect? And that is a little bit about what we're going to talk about today and what I learned that night. Well, to be honest, I didn't know the language of what I learned that night, but I was asking myself, what more can I do? And I had built a whole business around me. So today is about understanding why that works for the period that I was in and the consequence of what happens when our business moves forward and we don't. I was standing there when we had 3 stores and then 30. I was still making decisions. I was making decisions. They even joke, although I think it's slightly urban myth, that I was even deciding the name of what tea bags we were going to order. Now, of course, as funny as urban myths are, there was a serious tone to that. And once I understood the patterns of waves, then I could move forward. Perhaps we're saying in our mind, delegate, Julie, delegate. I can't tell you how many people said delegate. But think about it. For 30 stores, I was holding probably what was a business model that no one loved as much as me. It was a bit of an ugly baby. And then suddenly we're asked to delegate. It's much more complex than that. In supporting growth, which you can also download, we're going to be looking at that process of making you, the founder, redundant from that wave and putting you back in that right position for that wave. But for this moment, we need to understand what wave and what phase you and your business are on. And more importantly, what you can do to live a better business growth life. I've mentioned really that the phase, the growth wave I was in, it had shifted forward. And basically, I hadn't. And this is the moment that we want to align today. When we were scaling Specsavers in the Netherlands, the business was in a strong position. The purpose was super clear, and the team were really amazing. And the numbers were working. But it just felt heavy. And inside, especially inside me, it just felt like harder work. And the changes that we make, it's very important. It's not about making more effort. It's not about creating incredible strategies. It's not about changing things. It's all about understanding the leadership position that you take as a founder. Because ultimately, you're going to be hearing the stories of what happened when I did more things, when I added more strategy, when I added more value for our customer. So it's not about that. It's about understanding the place with which you stand. Most importantly, I want to reassure you at this stage is that once I repositioned myself, once I got out of the way the business growth, where everything was right, really flowed forward. And we celebrated an incredible year and the beginning of an amazing new phase for business growth. So if you're excited to hear about how and what we did, let's begin. I'm going to go back to the point where I said that growth wasn't linear and try and explain a little bit about why that isn't true. Why does it grow in phases? Well, as much as I had to reposition myself, I had to reposition myself to lead in a certain way, but also to how to shift the business model, that pattern of growth, to ensure that everything was capable of growing in that growth wave. In business terms, we call that the capabilities of a business. You have this amazing idea, you evolve it, it grows, bring in new people, new ways of working, new value, and of course, customers come. How you support that growth to make it happen are called capabilities. Is your business capable of achieving that growth? Now, there's many capabilities, but at Wyseminds, we know that there are 3 major capabilities that shape the pattern of that growth wave. And by understanding those 3 capabilities, we can begin to understand what we lead as well as how we lead. And the challenge that I talked about with Specsavers, and perhaps you can think about it in your own terms, is everything was right on paper. It was chugging. It was like the business hadn't matured enough in order to cope with that increase in growth. So not only was I standing in the way, but the business wasn't prepared for extra volume, extra responsibility, and that extra risk. So, in supporting growth, we're going to talk about the process for the founder, but this spotlight, we're going to talk about what the capabilities are asking of us compared to the growth phase that we are in. Those three phases is the kite, the Wyseminds kite. They form part of this, which we're going to talk about it. The three capabilities are decision making. How are decisions made in your company? Think about it. If you need to make change or take opportunities or take on new customers and clients, who takes that decision? How do you take that decision? Decision making is a huge capability of fast growing companies. Well, actually, any company. The second capability that has the greatest influence over whether we're heavy growth or, I suppose, getting ourselves well into that new wave is the organizational structure. Do we have the team, the suppliers organized in a way that enables us to grow? It's probably the one that most founders look at first. But it's more than just the people, the right place. How are they united? And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And third is value creation. How do we create value for our customer? Now, it's a favorite of founders for sure. We love creating value for our customer and ensuring that we are making the customer the hero of their story by giving them our amazing product and service. It's what we're super proud of, but it's also a big danger zone. Three capabilities that have the most influence over getting it aligned towards that phase that we're in. And this is super important. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because misalignment of the founder's position and those three capabilities is what is known as the founder's trap. Now, by name, we don't want to be going there, but actually, it's a very known theory where the founder doesn't move on, these capabilities get stuck, and the behaviors that got us to this amazing place that we're in are actually the main reasons why we are inhibiting growth going forward. So, if we're ready, let us have a little look at these in a little bit more detail. And the question, as we reflect, is how do you know where you should be standing? These three things will tell you faster than anything else. So, this is what we're going to understand: decision making, organizational purpose, and how we create value for our company. Now, I did mention that at Specsavers in the Netherlands, everything inside felt like hard work. So maybe stand in your business for that moment. Now you know this decision making, the capabilities, and the value creation. What gets stuck? What feels like hard work? What feels that it's blocking that way? Ourselves, we influence quite a lot. Decision making, who makes those decisions, organizational structure, and that value creation. The challenge, and I do want to open this up a little bit, because I mentioned before how many people sort of said to me, delegate, Julie, let go, delegate, delegate. You're surrounded by an amazing team. Psychologically, where that seems obvious, why did that not happen? And I think the most important thing when we look at the role of the founder and these three capabilities, it helps us to understand what's truly needed in our business. We don't attract amazing people by delegating tasks. No one's born to do somebody else's task. We want to give people roles and responsibilities and hand over influence so that other people can be the best that they can be. How do we align in there? And what's the consequence of when we don't? And that's a little bit about supporting growth. But it's also important for us to understand being in the business, that feeling, leading with your business is where we want to go. To power with your vision, to power with your story, and surround yourself by people who are on that same path. Are we in our business or with it? A little bit of a test. Are you, okay, have a think, be honest, it's just you. Are you the decision center? So things don't move without your sign off. The team is capable. Even if you don't have a direct team, perhaps you have suppliers. Do they ask your permission? Are they on board that, gets them to feel that they're part of your team and sitting alongside you? Is your week reactive? So is your sort of physical week full of very reactive situations? You're sorting out this, you're sorting out a little bit like whack-a-mole, trying to put out problems. You know what matters strategically, and you feel you want to move into the future, but you're probably asking yourself, well, if I haven't got time to get through my week, how can I have time strategically to look towards the future of my business, how I can create a greater impact? You're sort of pulled along in the operational detail without letting go. So that's number two. And then lastly, your energy is going out, but it's not coming back. You feel that you're doing all the right things, but it does feel like it's pushing uphill. Now, these are the three greatest signs of you being in your business. And if you are maybe reflecting that any of those descriptions of 1 to 3 are a little bit about you, the first thing to do before thinking about growth is to understand the growth waves, your role position, and how you influence these three capabilities. You mentioned the kite. This is the Wyseminds kite. And I want you to think about kite for a moment. For a kite to fly, it needs three things. And I've spoken about those three things. We're just going to pull it together. Kite needs wind, and it needs the kite itself, and it needs person directing and holding that kite. Well, the Wyseminds kite, the wind represents the external forces acting upon your business. So it's the economy, it's your position in the marketplace, it's your competition, it's how you're attracting your customer. Kite itself, well, we've talked about all those, your growth phase that you're in, or the wave, and your three capabilities. And of course, you are in control of that direction. And when all of these three elements align, that is the beginning of your seamless growth and to maximize that opportunity of an incredible growth wave that you're on. So let's look more about the kite. The kite itself is built of the elements. Have a little look at this. The growth phase, the three capabilities, really very important. Growth phase defines the development stage of your business, organizational structure we've spoken about. It determines if you've got the right people in the right roles with the clear ownership to support that phase. Not a list of tasks, the right ownership, the right belonging. Are they sat in the right place with you? And then the value creation process determines how you deliver to your customers the vision? How do you supply the product that makes a difference every single time? And you can be assured that it does. And this is the importance of alignment. You can imagine if any of these are out to sea, this is where it starts to feel heavy to be guiding that kite. And when it does, the founder pulls and pulls, and you are in control of that kite. You are in your business. And we need you flying just that little bit freer. Specsavers, that was the brand where I began to discover the power of misalignment. And it's a part of that process, the opportunity for alignment. This is my kite alignment. Now, we were in survival stage. We'd opened 30 stores and it was amazing. And we were trying to move into this establishing ground phase. When I looked at my kite, organizational structure was very immature. I still took the decisions in everything, very immature, which was what was pulling that kite back. And this is the objective of today. Now, when you're in startup, your business requires you. No one loves that baby as much as you're going to do. But the most important thing is as the business evolves, you need to mature with it and reposition yourself as the founder and those three capabilities. Listen, the founder's trap, or whatever we call it, the misalignment, isn't a fault. It's not because of you. It's not a flaw of yourself. It's just the outcome of misalignment. And if we can understand the pattern and realign, this is where the opportunity for our future growth, without losing the joy of what we do, will really come from. I want you just to briefly think back to that moment that you thought of at the start, when the last time those stars felt aligned, when growth felt easy. Think about it right now. What's the gap between those two feelings? Where it feels really great and where it feels heavy. And that is what we're going to discover now to understand your picture, like the one I have just put up of Specsavers. So let's begin to have a look at the growth phases as waves. Let's start at the beginning and talk about the wave itself, what the growth waves are. Now, at Wyseminds, we look at growth waves or phases like this. There's 5 main waves, and when you're seeing success, it kind of gets a little bit more into sub-waves as well, depending on which direction you have chosen to go. They're all about market positions, where your business stands in relation to its customer and what the business now needs next. Each phase creates a different kind of pressure, and each phase requires a different stance from the founder. And as you walk through them, I want you to quietly ask yourself one question. Where am I right now? Not where you want to be, not where you were last year, but right now. Let's look at those phases, the 5 phases. Have a think as we're going through these definitions of which phase your business is in. Let's begin at the beginning, when we have just got this amazing idea and we are forming our business. You've created something unique. It's yours. New angle, new way of doing it, or a redefined space in an existing market. Your focus is proof. Does this work? This is where you are right at the beginning. You're holding on to everything. And then people start to come into your product or business and you're being validated. You're now moving into this survival phase. You're building momentum. You're taking opportunities. You're still trying to work out whether your product or service really, truly works. Then, once you start to go through there and think, Okay, I think it's settled. You're moving into what we call establishing ground, especially what I was doing at Specsavers. You've survived, and now you want to be building that footprint, that blueprint into more customers. You're just more reassured about your business model. Then you move into seeing success. You've got returns are strengthening. And here you're trying to say, what do I do next? Do I just really consolidate what I'm brilliant at now and keep going? Do I want to move to new markets? Or am I still deciding about what is strong and where I want to go? Now, here's the important thing. Every time you move from one phase to the next, the business changes shape. You know, people come on board. As soon as people come on board, you've got more risk, more decisions. How do you take decisions? Um, and you can understand with that extra risk, why don't capabilities change as well? It needs to be altered and needs to be led in a different way. So before we test this, write down which phase you believe you're in right now. Don't overthink it. You can rewind it. I just want you to think about which phase you are in right now. Note it down because we're going to come back to it. Are you informing, survival, establishing ground, seeing success, or keeping growth? Have a little think. Okay, so you found your face. Well, hopefully, the first idea of it. Um, and now we're going to test the assumption by looking at the capabilities, the three capabilities of the kite. How aligned is that kite? So I'm now going to show you 3 rounds of statements, and each round has 7 options, A through to G. So there's no phase on the screen, so don't worry about that. You've written that down. And for each round, choose the statement that most accurately reflects your business today, not your ambition, where you hope to be, your dreams, or if you've done my 3-year vision, the 3-year vision. Be honest. This is just for you. It's all about understanding the gap in that kite to make sure you're leading that kite as effectively as possible. And after each round, I want you to put one letter for you to note which describes the current situation that you're in. Okay. Firstly, let's look at decision making. Now, you can see on the screen, they're all measured A to G with a description of what each one is. So, decision making, A. So it's all with you as the founders based on, on your beliefs. You just beginning. I think it comes back to you because quite often you're the only one who'll know what's going on right at the beginning, and it may just be you. B, still with you. There's a few things you're learning a little bit more, a little bit of data comes in, you're starting to change those decisions by the data that you're receiving back from customers or what's working. C, you've got some delegation, but you're still very much involved in it. Decision making, it's not complex. You're still on that growth path, but you're starting to understand a little bit about delegation, maybe a few suppliers, a few other people that are supporting your growth. D, the need is growing within the organization for decision making. Okay, so the business is growing even more. And then you move into E and F. So D is all about where are we going next? E is where you want to take decisions on how to make more of what you're doing. And F, throughout the organization, it's a combination of centralized, different boards. Maybe you've got an operational board and a strategic board. How do the decisions get made between the two? And how do you unite? And where are you stood? And then G, it's an established process. It's known by all, and it kind of works like clockwork. Also, danger zone. This isn't the peak of all success. That decision making, it just works, which is great. Okay, that's decision making. And if you want a little bit more time to read through it, just pause here, but note down your letter. Okay. 2, organizational structure, that next capability. Um, Simple and flat. Quite at the beginning, it's probably just you, maybe friends, family, maybe people are helping you out, suppliers, part time. And then as you kind of grow, you're moving towards a more centralized team. And then as you move into D and F, it's an established team. We've taken on a move from this functional specialist. You've probably got a general manager, you've got someone who's helping you, maybe a partner's come on board, maybe you've got investors, and that's a little bit about D, E, and F. Or you've got G, where it's just good for this moment. It feels like you're surrounded by the right people. Have a little think. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Pause if you need a little bit of time to read back through, but note down your letter. Okay, and finally, the founder's fun. I call it value creation. Um, uh, this is such an important part. I always say, if there's a line between you, the founder, and you, the customer, and value creation is how you create value for that customer every single time. And when it's just you and the customer, life was great. It was probably still quite variable, but as your phases get more and more, this has to be more consistent, more customers, and you, there is now a team that sits in between. How do you translate into the team, into what you do, into the processes, so that customer's life is changed for the better because they have met you? And that's what we call the value creation process. So that's full of what founders call the shiny new things. Big danger zone, as you'll hear of my story at the end. How do you create a process that gives the customer what they need, not more than what they need or less than what they need so that you make a difference and they stay loyal to using you and the brand? How do you do that? Supplying specific products? Is it very simple? You're still evolving. You've got a team coming on and that you're looking at different ways of doing it. Is it more evolved? How are you looking at it as you've got your digital part of the process in place already? Or are we still working in the way that we always did and things just don't seem to work seamlessly or effectively? Are you all on the same path or have you got old paths back into the scene? This is such an important one to review and reflect on. Have a think. Which letter is your value creation process on? Just write one letter down for yourself. Pause if you need to. So that's our 3 capabilities supported by the growth phase. You're holding on to the kite. Okay. Look at your 3 letters. If they all sit in the same phase, your capabilities are aligned. It's always good to reflect, though, go back through, are they all aligned? Growth may still feel hard, which is why it's important to take the second phase of this strategy, which is in surrounding growth, which is repositioning yourself effectively as a founder and how you can use that as a process. It's much more complicated than delegating. Kind of feels coherent. Perhaps when I asked you the question at the beginning, when did you last feel that the stars were all aligned and on your side? You probably said last week. It's probably an ongoing thing. But still, understanding that pattern is critical. If they sit across different letters, A's and B's and G, this is why it's beginning to drag. And I said at the beginning, the business is moving phases and you haven't. That can be you as the founder or these capabilities. So now what we want to try and do is take those letters and compare them to the phase. Okay, so that phase that we put in right at the beginning, which phase it was. Are the letters all still aligned? So where are we standing? Let's have a little look at the clean lines and where there could be blobs. Every misalignment in the kite ultimately traces back to one place, is the founder's stance, and also how your capabilities are aligned to growth. Well, imagine it as a kite. If you haven't got all four quads really aligned, or there's a bit of a hole in one, it's just not going to fly as well. Leadership research constantly shows that the behaviors with which we build a business is not necessarily the behaviors that we need in order to move on to a new wave or to move on to a growth path, however we want to see it. And if we're trying to create that momentum, so throwing money at marketing communications, and that kite is misaligned, this is where it starts to feel heavy, because that wave, because your customers want you, you're communicating with them, and they want your business, it's smacking you on the back of the head because you're holding on to the behaviors of that current wave. And ultimately, like myself, you begin to sink in the middle. So, to prevent your 3 a.m. moment of sitting in the garden, I want to talk a little bit about this alignment. The height is something that you can use visibly. Are you standing too close? Are you too far? Are you sort of not looking at these phases at all? And this is so important. Holding on with too much of a tight string is also misalignment. So look again, let's start at your decision making and then the organizational and then the value creation. And I want you to make uh, this following statement for yourself. My phase, so that's the phase that your business is in, requires me to, but I am currently, so the gap is. And you can do that for each capability. You don't need to know the answers yet. You just need to recognize the pattern. I wish I'd known that, because I would have said my phase of establishing ground currently needs me to be out on the road, really supporting Specsavers and selling that brand. But I'm currently holding too tight, which means that the gap is I'm in the office and I'm not out there. These are just small acceptance of things and the consequence of behaviors that we hold on to that may be happening. So let's add one more little layer of reflection and ask yourself honestly whether you are too close, too far, holding on, being in that business. And these statements help you understand and recognize that misbalance and misalignment in those three capabilities and your influence on it. Have a little think. One insight. I have spoken a lot about my journey at Specsavers and what I learned from that journey. Sort of said, listen, I didn't know the language of the time. And that is super important. We were in survival. We'd opened 30 amazing, 30 amazing stores. Suddenly stuff began to chug. I blamed the external environment. I was holding my kite. It had a very tight string and the wind was huge in a recession. It was easy to blame. The world's most competitive market I was in, recession. Ultimately, even though that did slightly influence it, the greatest influence was the misalignment of those capabilities and the inability for that kite to fly free. Hence, I was standing in the way of the next wave that would have loved to be let free. And that is exactly what we did. We realigned the capabilities. I made myself redundant from my current position. You're going to hear about that in supporting growth in order to understand where do I position myself as the founder to be the best that I can be, to give that space for others to join the path and be the best that they can be. And that is very much the journey that I took. I did say I was going to mention something about the shiny things of value creation, the founder's playground. And in fact, as part of that, holding tight with the wind around, you go into the behavior where founders are very good. You create more value for your customer. You give them more things. If I give them this, then they'll love me more. Then they'll come back to me. Maybe I'm not explaining that well enough. But in fact, as you increase the value you give your customer, you dilute your vision. It becomes complex, and the customer goes, wow, this is amazing, but I don't know the core of what needs to be changed. Just a lot of things. That value creation was right out where it should be in establishing ground. And once that came back in, the team came up and we shared decision making and had a known way of making decision making because we had a unified purpose. That is when we touched the position of market leadership for the first time. And boy, it felt good. So that's a lot about how we learn from what we are doing. Growth doesn't get stuck first. It's the leadership that does. And I hope that during this period of time, it's helped you understand how to look upon your current situation, to understand that kite, the misalignments of the capabilities, no matter how small your business is or how big, those three capabilities have the ability to build a brick wall. And the founder stuck behind that brick wall also adds to that journey. So I hope today it's given us those first steps to understand how we can move forward and, how we can start releasing some of the blocks within our business by looking at those three capabilities, or certainly asking ourselves different questions. You should also be able to download Supporting Growth, the founder process of being able to let go and move on. How can we avoid the founder's trap? But understanding these capabilities is your first way of understanding that growth in business is not linear. It comes in waves, and each wave is a known pattern. And when we can understand that pattern, those three capabilities, what that phase needs of us, and how we can build the capabilities to ensure our businesses have that opportunity to grow, the dam of growth can begin. And I hope that through this, you experience that moment where you can release that opportunity of growth as well. So if you want to find out more about this, of course, it's all available in the Wyseminds Liftoff program, as well as the whole of your journey platform. But download the Supporting Growth, which is how do you make yourself redundant so that you come back in a greater position for your company. Together, these both will support you to having a more seamless growth plan, which is what we strive to do at Wyseminds. For this moment, enjoy, and hopefully I will see you again soon on the Your Journey platform. Thank you.